All right. Welcome everybody to this latest webinar. Today I'll be talking about silhouettes. I'm Calvin Leduc. I'm head of faculty at the Vancouver Animation School, also known as VANAS. I'm also one of the instructors here. A little bit about myself. I worked in the industry professionally for over 20 years. I'm originally Canadian. I started working in Ottawa on a television series called The Raccoons. Then I went to Montreal, worked on commercials for a year. Then I went to the United States, worked on the first Alvin and the Chipmunks feature, followed by working in London, England on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I came back and I worked for Dale Bear in Southern California doing commercials for a few years. I became an American citizen. Then I worked for DreamQuest on a Sony science film for 6 months. I worked at Rick Rich on their first Swan Princess feature film. Disney Feature Animation invited me back to work on their animated feature films. I worked on films for 10 years there, quite a few. Uh, Emperor's New Groove, Hercules, Tarzan, Mulan, uh, Hunchback of Notre Dame. They retrained me in computer animation. My first job was working for Sony on a Neopets video game, Animatics, followed by a feature film, working in San Clemente. Then I became an instructor. I moved back to Canada, up here where we're currently located here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I was the head of a school for 4 years. I became a contract instructor for a handful of years. I was a professor in the United States, working at a school that taught video games. And for about the last 12 years, I've been teaching for the Vancouver Animation School, and for about the last 8 or 9 years, I've been the head of faculty here. So let's get on to this topic that we've chosen today for this webinar. We're going to be talking about silhouettes, which are important in designing characters for animation. The definition of a silhouette is a dark shape or outline of someone or something that's visible against a lighter background. Now, a silhouette does not have to be black. It can be any color. The reason why we use a silhouette when we design a character is you're only dealing with the overall shape and the proportions, right? And it's easy to adjust. You can scale it. You can make it taller, shorter, wider, narrower, very easily. You're not worried about the details. What you're trying to create is an easily identifiable character. Here you can see all of these different characters, and you instantly recognize them. Mickey Mouse, Daffy Duck, Bart Simpson, Bob SquarePants, right? The Roadrunner. Some are older. You might be too young to know some of these characters. You might not have seen these cartoons, but you should just be able to see them quickly and be able to identify them. And that's the importance of working with silhouettes. Two more modern characters coming from Pixar, right? Jessie and Woody. And you also want to be able to recognize personality and traits, possibly profession, who they are, what they are. Here you can see the cowboy hat, easily identify Woody as a cowboy, and Jexie, she's basically has the same body as Woody, but totally different style of hat, and she has all these fringes, and she's easily identifiable as the woman, right? So something that you have to understand and use, because there are archetypes, there are stereotypes in designing animated characters. If you're wanting to do a very young character, and here's one between the ages of 1 and 2, you're basically going to create a character that's just 2 heads tall. If you want your character to be between the ages of 2 and 4, you're going to create a character that's 2.5 heads tall, right? They have very short arms. Basically, their palm of their hand is going to be a circle with very short, stubby fingers. I'm just moving this over so I can change the image. If you're working with a character 5 to 6 years of age, you should be creating a character that is roughly 3 heads tall. Character that's between 7 and 10 years of age, they're 4 heads tall. So these are formulas that have been established, and you use them when creating your characters for people to easily recognize, you know, who and how old they are. So getting back to a baby, right? You've got a character, here it's one head. The head's very big on a baby, and then the body's basically a head, maybe a head and a half. Very short limbs, right? Very stubby fingers. Majority of the features are down in the bottom of the face. They have a very large, right, cranium, forehead. A little bit of hair, not a lot. Hasn't grown in yet. The goal in Silhouette is to easily recognize the character, like almost instantly. Right? You don't want to be confused. You don't want to be going, who is this? I have no idea if it's this person or this person, right? This is from the cast of Peanuts. This is the character Charlie Brown. He's a young child, right? He's got this huge head. And again, just to give him that very young design, he has almost no hair. He's like almost like a baby on top of his head. And his companion, easily recognizable, right, as a non-human, is Snoopy, right, his faithful dog. You want to design characters that contrast from each other, right? Male, female, great contrast, right? Human, animal, great contrast. Different sizes, right? Even though Charlie Brown's a small child, the dog's even smaller. Hats are very important for identifying professions, right? Here you can see several different types of hats, but they're all basically for a chef, right? A cook. You can see the aprons. Purpose of that is to keep your clothes clean. Silhouettes are also good for coming up with very strong poses, and that's right paramount importance when you're doing animation. You don't want to show the pose straight on. You do it to the side in silhouette. Here you can see easily, right, working with a saucepan, frying pan, a pot. You can see adding food. You can see using a spoon. Very important. Include hats. Think about it. You add a different hat and you can tell it's a fireman, it's a policeman, it's a baseball player. Here's a nice example. I was saying that all silhouettes do not have to be just black, right? Here is a solid color and there's no details, but you can tell it's a long gown. You can tell it's elegant, sophisticated woman on the left here. She's having a drink, a martini. Man, you can tell he's wearing a suit. Traditionally, doesn't happen 100% of the time, but a lot of the time, you'll make the man a little taller than the woman. There's certain stereotypes, right? If you're doing a wacky screwball type character, right, you're going to want them to have long legs, big clown-like feet, narrow neck, right? Very low brow. There's not a lot of brain up here. Definitely goes for Daffy Duck. Fantasy character, right? Dragons don't exist in reality. It's one of those type of characters where the rules are broken for anatomy. On our planet, at least, you don't have any characters that have 4 limbs, right? He has 4 legs and hind legs, plus wings. It just doesn't exist. So you instantly recognize this as a fantasy character. Another fantasy character, right? 4 limbs with wings, a fairy, right? And there's a multitude of different types of wings you can include, but here they are using butterfly wings, right? And if you've ever seen butterflies, they're very delicate, very fragile, their wings, right? Easily broken. If you had a 120-pound woman, I don't think that they'd be able to fly with butterfly wings. But that's the great thing about animation. You're creating worlds, your own world, right? And this might not be a 120-pound woman. Actually, here we're seeing the silhouette of a mushroom. And unless that's a 6-foot mushroom, this is just a little tiny character. So other objects, in this case, a plant, is giving a scale for their character. This comes from one of the earliest primetime, very successful animated series called The Flintstones, right? And here's the star, Fred Flintstone. He's very masculine, right? He's got a barrel chest, fairly stocky, and it's prehistoric. So, right, the clothes are very rough. You know, they kind of look like fur. His hairstyle is very rough. You can see stray pieces of hair sticking out everywhere. And he doesn't wear shoes. He's barefoot. And a good rule of thumb for animation design is you don't have to be anatomically correct. If you look closely at these type of characters, you can see they only have 3 fingers, 1 thumb, and only 3 toes, right? They got to remember they're starting the car with their feet. They probably wore off the other toes. Here's an example of a giant's silhouette. A very important rule for creating a giant is make the head very small, and then your character is going to look, you know, extremely tall because he's, like the A-frame getting smaller and smaller as you go to the top. If you want to have an easier time drawing things repeatedly, you want to simplify things over a lot to make it easier to draw things quickly. You can see they're just basically, noodle shapes for the arms and legs. And you can define that it's a girl holding hands with a boy, different hairstyles, right? You include a ponytail or a pigtail. Here's a silhouette of a goofy character. You can base any goofy type of character on this formula where you give it a very swayed back shape, um, very large, clown shoes, long neck, possibly buck teeth, uh, hooded eyes, even though we don't see the eyes here, and, very scraggly hair. Is that a word? Here's an example of including the hat. And here's royalty. So they're wearing a crown. As soon as you place a crown on somebody's head, it's instantly recognizable as royalty, right? They're wearing gowns, uh, very old style of clothing, right? Goes back centuries, uh, robes, and carrying a staff. Another couple of examples of a young girl, right? You can see the pose on the left side. The feet are turned in, which I think the expression is pigeon-toed. Um, Makes it, feel young and weak. Over on the right, a couple of pigtails up at the top, right? Again, makes it feel very feminine. And again, getting more into animated design, pushing everything and simplifying it, right? Uh, Round shapes are cute, happy. She's got a ponytail in the back. She's got noodle shapes for her limbs, her arms and her legs, right? And short little fingers. I threw this one in because my 10 years I was at Disney, the only film that was in production that I never worked on was this one, being done in Florida, Lilo and Stitch. And I saw the dailies and they were great, right? And again, they're pushing the design to be very simplified, right? She has long hair. She's a little girl. She's got this round palm of her hand with little stubby fingers. And she's wearing, I believe, a dress. This is Mary Poppins. You can also think of it as kind of a caregiver. She's somebody that's providing, for others, uh, protecting others. So she has this prop, right? An umbrella. So you're even establishing location, right? Two places really that you really need an umbrella. I worked in London, England. I know there's a lot of rain there, or here in Vancouver. You need an umbrella. And, typical bag lady. She has this huge bag that she has limitless supplies in there, right? very sensible, has a hat, has a scarf, and feminine, wearing a dress. This is a masculine silhouette. I should mention, you're not going to learn everything in a brief, half-hour webinar, guys, about character design. You have to go to school, right? If you're interested in getting a little bit of training in character design, we do have a 3-month intro to digital art course. If you're interested in expanding it out into a profession, I highly recommend our 1-year concept art diploma course, where you're designing characters, vehicles, environments. So typically, a human male is on average about 7.5 heads tall, but when you get into more of a superhero character, you're going to push that to be 8, 9, possibly 10 heads tall, right? You want broad shoulders and a narrow waist. What you end up with is this V shape here in the torso. And whether your character is tall or short, having that V-shaped torso pushes the character to being masculine. I grabbed this example. I thought it was a good one for a silhouette of a monster, right? Typically, anything with lots of triangles in it, it gives off kind of a villain or eerie feeling, right? And this guy has tons of little spikes. He's even got horns. His hands are more like claws. So, and we're not even seeing feet on this character. So it's very eerie, right? Just feels like the character's flying or floating around. This one I labeled as a silhouette of a mother, but it doesn't have to be a mother. It just could be a woman. The inclusion of this prop, right? She's very old-fashioned vacuum, but it's still identifiable. So she's vacuuming, right? Nobody likes to vacuum. She's wearing a dress, and she has long hair. This comes off as a young woman, right? There's very long hair, very high heels, exaggerated, right? Very thin and athletic. These used to be funny films when I was a kid. The character is called Pippi Longstocking, and you can tell that she's not a young child. She's getting close to being a teenager, right? She has long limbs, and she wears pretty funny boots, and she has these huge pigtails sticking out of her head. I brought up this painting by Pete Hawley. I thought it was a very nice rendering of children, young children, because you can see how he's following the formula. I went in there and I turned the characters, the 3 characters, the children, into silhouettes. And you can see how, right? 1, 2, 3 heads tall, 1, 2, 2.5 maybe heads tall, right? Different ages. So you do want that contrast in heights, right? An older girl, a younger girl. Right? They're wearing dresses. The boy, right, is interested in cowboys because he's wearing a cowboy hat. Really nice little illustration. This is a silhouette of the character, the Pink Panther, right? You're getting elegance by him being tall and thin. His tail, basically, it's like a cane, right? It's a prop in itself. There is actually a style of animation called silhouette animation, right? And this one is it's an extremely old film using silhouette animation, and the character stays in profile, you know, for the whole film. And you can, see this little boy. He's wearing an oversized cap and a jacket. I grabbed this one. It's a woman. She's military. You can tell by the uniform. You can tell by the pose, saluting. Remember, the hats are an important element of silhouettes to establish what is their profession. Stitch, right? Stitch is an alien. You want to establish that they are not, right, native to our planet. Stitch had, what, 4 arms, 2 legs, right? Originally, he pulls some of those arms into his body. He has these hugely oversized ears. This is a clear example of a superhero, like I was saying, where you're easily 9 or 10 heads tall. The heads are very small on superheroes. They have hugely exaggerated muscles, right? How broad their shoulders are. I included a couple photographs to show you how easy it is to recognize what you're looking at, right? A girl wearing a long dress, really long hair, swinging, and an example of a boy, also at the same time swinging. If you're doing a tough character in animation, you're going to do very broad chest, very wide shoulders, short arms, going to have very narrow waist, short legs. You want very little forehead, right? Very little brain in there. Huge jaw. Again, you can see these formulas I've been telling you about. If you're doing a very cute, innocent character, and this is Tweety Bird, you're going to base it on a baby, right? Huge forehead. All the features are really close together down at the bottom of the head. And basically, they're only 2 heads tall. And very short arms. Dracula, right? We talked about the elements of what makes things evil. We tend to use triangles. So, count how many sharp, pointy triangles can you see in the figure of Dracula. And this one's a little more realistic. Here's another, really exaggerated example of evil character, right? Where you're simplifying everything and you just need, right, pointy ears, pointy costume, pointy cape, pointy teeth. You don't use big round, cute eyes. You turn them into these little slits. Maleficent, again, a villain, horns, right? Traditionally, humans don't have horns, so you put horns on a human and they look evil. Look at all the pointy triangles. There's a lot of examples of weather vanes and where they use animals. And I really like this one. It had a strong pose, and it clearly showed all the features of what a rooster has. You need the beak, the tail. Think about characters, like a witch. They all have these long pointy hats, right? Whether it's a wizard or a witch, when you're getting into fantasy, right? Magic. Female silhouette, again, long hair. Typically, you're going to give a female character wide hips to make them more feminine. Here is a more cartoony, stylized version of a woman's silhouette, right? You're giving them a dress, wide hips, and really exaggerated legs. You can also see a long ponytail in the back. Okay, so I do want to talk about our school as well, guys. Give me a second here. Van Ness has been around for 14 years. We're the oldest online school here in Canada. We started with just a couple courses, which was 3D animation and concept art. And we're up to 11 one-year diploma courses. All of our instructors work in the industry. Before I talk about more of the courses, before I forget, I did want to also talk about a contest that we have right now. It is for Father's Day. So you have up until Father's Day to do one piece of artwork, and it's going to include our characters, which are called the Fantastics. Submit something, whether it's a drawing, a painting, whatever you want to do, and you could win a digital arts, the Intro to Digital Arts contest. You'll win a digital arts certificate course, right? Let me get back up to our courses here. So when you're doing our courses, they're 1 year in duration. You're coming for 2 live classes a week. Each class is 1 hour in duration. That's the minimum. We have usually a few extra classes that are optional you can attend. You could attend learning more about the software. Typically, all the software we use is freeware. If you're taking 3D animation, we use Maya, which is free for students and schools to use. You would complete your assignments, submit it on the weekend. The beginning of the week, you're going to attend a live review class where the teacher will review the work, answer your questions, give you feedback. A few days later, 2 or 3 days later after that, you're going to have your lecture class. The instructor is going to talk about the next assignment, demonstrate how to do it. There's recorded lectures on demonstrating how to do the assignment as well. You can see here some of our instructors, what their experience is. The industry asked us to put together a 2D computer animation course. We didn't have that for years. We thought there was enough schools teaching 2D animation. They said, no, we just can't find enough people. And it's great to hear that. The most 2D computer animation in North America is done here in Vancouver. Being online, you could be anywhere in the world taking your course. You don't even have to be at home. You could do it in a library. If you know how to do animation, whether it's 2D or 3D, you're welcome to come and take the animated short film course. Doesn't matter if you did your training at some other school or our school, or you just learned on your own, right? You're not restricted to which software you use. So you're spending the 1 year coming up with your story, your storyboard, you're blocking it out, you're designing your backgrounds, you're building your props, and you're animating the film and adding the credits. I think this is a great way to come up with a demo reel piece. It's also a great calling card. When I was in college, I worked with a couple guys and we made a short film, and for years we entered it into contests. We had a distributor, and for years we made money selling copies of our film. Concept art is design. You get nothing for free in the animation industry, whether you're working on features, specials, TV series, video games. Everything has to be designed. And that's what concept art is. You're learning how to design all the characters, all the props, all the environments. This is a great course, production management. It's fairly new. We've only had it for a little over a year. We couldn't find schools where people that didn't want to do the art, they wanted to be in the studio and managing the team. We couldn't find a course that taught that. So we contacted professionals that do production management in the studios, built the course, and we have professionals that are professional production managers teaching this course. This is the intro to digital art course I was telling you about. It's a sampler platter. Those that have never trained online, did any digital art, this is the course that we built for you. If you don't have a portfolio to get into our diploma courses, this is the course for you. You are getting 2 weeks of concept art, 2 weeks of modeling, 2 weeks of 2D animation, 2 weeks of 3D animation, 2 weeks of effects. You're seeing, do I like to take online courses? You're seeing what type of direction would I like to go? It's taught by one of our very first graduates. He has his own studio, and he's a great teacher as well, and a close friend of mine called Herman. Esports management. This is not for people that want to play video games. This is for people that want to manage esports. How do you put on a tournament? How do you train your team? This is what this esports management course does. Video game design. This is taught by people that daily they're making video games, right? I've been at a lot of schools, and I usually see students will just model a character or something like that. This is where you're going to be building your own games. Virtual reality. This is, definitely the cutting edge future. Using the headset and your virtual reality software, you're going to learn how to draw, paint, and animate in virtual reality. Very specialized course, writing for animation. It's only 3 months long, taught by a professional that writes for animated shows and the idea of this course is you're coming up with a pitch Bible for your own TV series. 3D modeling, you're starting with Maya, and then you're definitely transitioning into very high-end 3D modeling software, which is called ZBrush. Digital map painting, another example of we just couldn't find, or the industry couldn't find, digital map painters. They had to go to Europe. So we decided to create this course here. It is where you're doing very high-end realistic paintings. You're changing seasons. You're working with live action plates of backgrounds, and you're maybe taking a summer shot and you're putting snow into it, or you're adding a ship into water, or you're doing set extensions. You look and there's only one story building, but you can add 4 stories onto the building. Visual effects animation. It's not using Maya and pushing a button to create your visual effects. You're using coding. You're using the software called Houdini, and you're doing a lot of scripting to create very customizable effects, whether it's fire, smoke, snow. So I'll end this with answering a few questions, although at the moment I can't see where the questions are, so I'll probably be asking my co-worker Erica. People can type into either the Q&A or the chat box, and I will give you an answer. If I don't have the answer, guys, if you want more information, you can always contact us at info, I-N-F-O, @vanas.ca, and we'd be glad to answer your questions, whether they're about the industry or about our school or our courses.
Hi, Calvin. So through the chat, I don't know if you could see a question over there.
I can't see anything. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. What's the simple way to start practicing silhouette drawing if I never done it before?
You know, you want to draw something. I would suggest start with just the outline, right? Whether it's pencil or a marker or a pen, it's totally your choice. Start with the outline. You could actually draw, right, the entire shapes and add up. So you're going, okay, here's the head, here's the body, and they overlap. That's totally fine. Here's a leg, here's another leg, here's my arms. Just put them on top. And then just shade in everything. And that's how you're creating your silhouettes. Now, the great thing is you can mix it up, right? You can, let's try one where the head is long and bigger. Let's try one where the body is smaller, right? Same type of character, just you're changing the proportions.
And yes,
Yep.
and it comes a second question about that. How do I know if my silhouette is working or not? What should I look for?
You know, you're the first judge. Do you think it looks appealing? Is it, is it putting a smile on your face? One of the ultimate tests is go find someone that doesn't know art, right? Go find someone that isn't your mother, because your mother's going to say everything you touch is gold, and go ask your friend, go ask the neighbor, what does this look like? And ask them to tell you. Who do you think that is, right? Does that look like a dog? Does that look like a policeman? Does that look like an alien, right? And you don't coach them and say, does that look like an alien? But if they say, oh, that looks weird, that looks right, like that it doesn't belong on Earth, good.
Okay, so comes another one. Do you recommend starting every character design with silhouettes, or it is more useful in a specific stage or styles of animation?
You don't have to begin with silhouettes, but at some point, you do want to, because it's really easy and quick to just shade in what you've drawn. Make a copy. Don't just destroy your art. And if you have 3 characters that you want, put them side by side at the right heights compared to each other and make them silhouettes, right? Is there sufficient contrast between them? Can you tell, oh, this is a guy and this is a girl. Oh, and this is his animal, right? Okay. I do want to thank everybody for taking time out on their busy day. Look forward to seeing you in the future as well.
I'm so sorry. I have a last one, Calvin, if you don't mind. So, what are the common silhouette mistakes beginners make, and how can we avoid them in our sketches?
Yeah. Making something with too much detail, right? Just tons and tons of, you don't need 10 horns, two horns, right? Don't make the fingers or the arms too short, right? You got to remember your character actually has to be able to do things like grab things and reach for things, and right. Those are very common mistakes that I see.
I see. But, thank you so much, Calvin.
All right. Everybody, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.